My name is Blake. I'm 25, married, and a beta. Yeah, you heard that right, a beta, married an alpha. It's a long story, one that probably starts back when I was still wearing little open crotch pants. My spouse, Daniel, and I grew up together, proper childhood sweethearts. We'd been inseparable since kindergarten. Daniel was so pretty back then, fair skin, bright eyes, and soft features, like a doll. Naturally, he always got the mom role when we played house. And me, for some reason, maybe because I was loud and rowdy, I was always the dad. After playing that game for so long, I guess I got too into character. One sunny afternoon, I took Daniel's soft little hand and marched home proudly. Standing before my parents, I puffed out my chest and declared with all the seriousness my tiny body could manage, "Dad, Mom, when I grow up, I'm going to marry Daniel." My mom burst out laughing so hard she almost fell off the couch, and my dad nearly sprayed his tea across the room. Only Daniel stood quietly behind me, his big eyes blinking, face slightly red, and he gave the tiniest nod. From that day on, I decided it was my sacred duty to provide for the family. Daniel's family wasn't doing great, his parents had divorced, and he lived with his grandmother. We were the same age, but he was half a head shorter and so thin and timid that he'd hide behind me whenever he saw strangers, like a frightened little bunny. That wouldn't do. How could my wife go hungry or cold? So I started dragging Daniel home every day. At dinner, I'd pile food into his bowl until it looked like a small mountain. "Daniel, eat more meat, it's good for you. And the fish will make you smarter." I even gave our housekeeper specific instructions. "Auntie, make an extra breakfast tomorrow, something nutritious. I'll take it to Daniel for school." The next morning, I stuffed warm milk and an egg sandwich into Daniel's backpack, trying to sound serious and mature. "Remember to eat breakfast, okay? If you don't, you'll never grow tall. Then how are you going to be my wife?" Daniel always nodded obediently and whispered, "Thank you, Blake." Watching him slowly gain a little weight and seeing color return to his cheeks filled me with an absurd sense of accomplishment. Through middle school and high school, I kept up my mission of raising my wife and even started preparing for our future. I don't know where I picked it up, maybe from some dumb book or cheesy drama, but one day, I held Daniel's hand seriously and said, "Daniel, you need to learn how to cook and do laundry." He blinked at me, confused. I looked deadly serious. "My wife has to be gentle and domestic." Daniel froze for a few seconds, then nodded sweetly. "Okay, I'll learn." Looking back now, I seriously want to go back in time and slap myself. Why did I make him learn that? Was I digging my own grave? Karma came fast. Once Daniel hit high school, it was like he got injected with growth hormones. He shot up like bamboo after rain. He'd been shorter than me before, but soon we were the same height, and then, he started getting taller. I panicked. Completely. This couldn't be happening, a wife taller than her husband, unacceptable. So I launched Operation Height Rescue. I drank milk like a maniac, morning and night, until I smelled faintly like a dairy product. But it didn't work. A month later, Daniel had officially surpassed me. I started secretly stuffing height pads into my shoes. Not just one layer, several. Walking felt like balancing on stilts. The worst part, I even stopped inviting Daniel home for meals. I thought maybe if I cut back his nutrition, he'd stop growing. 2 days later, I spotted him in the school cafeteria. He was sitting all alone, his tray holding nothing but a sad pile of stir-fried greens, not even a speck of meat. Watching him eat quietly in that lonely corner made my heart twist. Screw height. Screw pride. To hell with it all. I grabbed my tray of braised ribs and rushed over, plopped down across from him, and shoved all my meat into his bowl. "Eat. All of it. Look how skinny you are, it's ridiculous." Daniel looked up at me, startled, his pretty eyes wide and uncertain. "Blake." I turned my face away, grunted, and muttered in my head. "Blake, a real man takes care of his wife. Height doesn't matter." No, it doesn't. There are plenty of husbands shorter than their wives, right? So I kept feeding him, day after day, even as his height passed 180 centimeters and showed no signs of stopping. My heart was bleeding, but my hands never stopped putting food on his plate. Well, I chose this wife. I'd feed him even if it killed me. At the time, I naively thought the only problem between us was height. I had no idea that a much bigger disaster was waiting for me just around the corner. The 3 years of high school passed in a blur, me feeding my long-legged wife with both pain and joy, while secretly stacking more layers inside my shoes. Graduation was around the corner, and with it came the big event everyone had been quietly waiting for, differentiation. I wasn't worried at all. In fact, I was kind of looking forward to it. Come on, what was there to doubt? With shoe lifts, I stood at a proud one. 82 meters, solidly built, even if most of it was soft muscle, cheerful by nature, always the leader among kids, and naturally, Daniel's lifelong protector. That's textbook alpha material right there. As for Daniel, sure, he'd gotten taller, but look at that delicate face, that gentle personality, that domestic skill set. If he wasn't an Omega, then who was? Perfect. Alpha and Omega, a match made in heaven. I'd even picked out baby names. Hopefully, we'd have a beautiful Omega daughter who looked like him, and I'd find her a reliable Alpha like me. A perfect little circle. When testing day arrived, I walked into the testing center with all the confidence of a man going to receive an award, not a diagnosis. Blood drawn, then the weight. I crossed one leg over the other, already daydreaming about how I'd mark Daniel once I became an Alpha. I'd heard that during marking, Omegas became extra attached to their Alphas. Daniel would definitely be even sweeter then. Blake, your report. The nurse's voice cut straight through my fantasy. I took the paper, still smiling confidently, and looked down. Gender, beta. I blinked, then rubbed my eyes. Nope, it still said it. Beta. Was this a joke? Me, a beta? The machine must be broken. The nurse gave me a sympathetic look. The results are accurate. Next, Daniel. Daniel looked nervous as he glanced at me. I forced a smile and waved him toward the testing room. The report in my hand suddenly felt unbearably heavy. Beta. I was a beta. My dream of being a strong Alpha hero just shattered into dust. Wait, hold on. That didn't matter. Daniel was definitely an Omega. A Beta-Omega couple could still work. Plenty of Betas and Omegas were happy together. Yes, that was fine. Hope reignited in my chest as I stared at the testing room door, silently chanting, Omega, Omega, Omega. After what felt like forever, the door opened. Daniel walked out, report in hand, face pale and eyes downcast. Something in my gut twisted. I hurried over and snatched his paper, my gaze locking straight onto the gender field. Alpha. SSS level Alpha. Those letters exploded in my brain like a bomb, blasting every thought into ashes. Daniel, an Alpha, the same Daniel I'd been feeding since childhood, the one I'd been planning to marry and take care of. It felt like the world had gone silent. I swear I could hear the sound of my heart cracking, sharp, splintering, final. He stood there, head down, long lashes trembling, casting tiny shadows under his eyes, lips pressed tight, like a kid who knew he'd done something wrong. But damn it, no matter how pitiful he looked, it didn't change the truth. He was an Alpha, a top-tier, SSS level Alpha. We were doomed, Alpha and Beta together. Sure, it happened, but rarely. And when it did, the Beta was always the dependent one. But I'd spent my whole life thinking I was the one taking care of him. Now the entire story had flipped upside down. I stumbled home in a daze and locked myself in my room for 3 days. On the 3rd day, I made what I believed was the right decision. Better a clean cut than endless pain. I asked Daniel to meet me at the little park near my house, the same one where we used to play house as kids. He came wearing a plain white t-shirt and jeans, slim and tall, the evening breeze ruffling his hair and revealing that smooth forehead and those innocent, beautiful eyes. Damn, he looked good. Too bad he was an Alpha. I took a deep breath, pushed down the ache in my chest, and forced my voice to sound calm and steady. Daniel, let's break up. He froze, eyes widening instantly. It had to be done. I clenched my fists, avoiding his gaze. You're an Alpha. I'm a Beta. We're not a match. You'll find a good Omega someday. The words left my mouth, leaving my chest hollow, like something vital had been ripped out. The air went dead silent. After a long pause, I heard a shaky, trembling inhale. I looked up. Daniel's eyes were red, tears pooling fast, his whole face twisting with confusion and pain. He stepped forward, grabbing my wrist tightly, his grip almost desperate. His voice cracked as he spoke. Why are you breaking up with me? Blake, did I do something wrong? Tell me, please. I'll change. I swear I'll change. His shoulders trembled violently, like a child abandoned by the world. Is it because I'm an Alpha? I can take suppressants, I can even get surgery to remove my glands. Just don't leave me. Please, Blake, don't leave me. His tears finally spilled, hot drops splashing onto my hand. You're all I have left. Damn it. My mind went blank. My chest twisted painfully tight, like someone was squeezing my heart with bare hands. Right. His grandmother had passed away last year. He really didn't have anyone else now. And what did I just say to him? I was about to abandon him, at his lowest, when he had no one else. Blake, what kind of monster are you? Guilt came crashing down, drowning every ounce of pride I had left. Don't cry, please, don't cry, I muttered, fumbling to wipe his tears, words tumbling out. I was wrong, okay. I was talking nonsense. We're not breaking up. I'm not going anywhere. It's just us. Forever, just us. Daniel lifted his tear-filled eyes, his voice trembling. Are really, 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 more real than gold? I even raised a hand, swearing to the sky. It was my fault. I must have hit my head or something. Don't cry, you're breaking my heart. Slowly, his sobs quieted, though he still hiccuped softly, clutching my wrist like he'd never let go again. Looking at his flushed eyes and trembling nose, my heart melted completely. Whatever awkwardness I'd felt about our roles vanished under the weight of guilt and tenderness. So what if he was an alpha? Who said an alpha couldn't be the wife? My Daniel was beautiful and gentle. I'd take him any way he came. And just like that, we stumbled right back into our strange, messy love story. 10. College was like a watershed in our lives. Even though Daniel and I were still at the same university, we were in different majors, on campuses miles apart. The days of being glued to each other every single day turned into seeing each other once or twice a week. And Daniel, he'd gotten so busy. Suddenly he was juggling multiple part-time jobs, tutoring, working at a cafe, even taking freelance design gigs. Every time I tried to meet up, he was either working or on his way to work. I knew why. Daniel wanted to rely on himself, to pay for his own living expenses and tuition. The little savings his grandmother had left him had barely gotten him through high school. It didn't sit well with me. My family was well off. My parents had already said they'd gladly cover Daniel's tuition and living costs. He's family, they said, just think of it as raising another son. But Daniel refused, firmly. Blake, I already owe your parents too much, he said softly, but his tone left no room for argument. I want to do this on my own. Well, what could I do? My wife was determined, and had principles. So I let him be. Sometimes I'd sneak snacks and fruit into his backpack, or drag him out for a good meal under the excuse of improving nutrition, when really, I just wanted to spoil him. Watching him grow taller, his frame broadening, the boyish softness of his face giving way to something mature and sharp, I found my old confusion about our genders quietly replaced by something else. A father's pride. Like watching his son finally grow up. Except, my son was now 185 meters tall, half a head taller than me. Even my height insoles couldn't save me anymore. Sigh. Whatever. Height is just a number. Gender isn't an obstacle. I'm Blake. If I said I'd marry him, then I'll marry him. 11. On graduation day, I wore my gown and dragged Daniel all over campus to take photos. The sunlight was perfect. He stood beneath a cherry blossom tree in a white shirt, smiling at me as I acted ridiculous. The sight was so beautiful it looked straight out of a movie poster. Something in me stirred. A wild impulse hit. This was the moment. I grabbed his hand and pulled him toward the campus-famous Lover's Hill. There were other graduates taking pictures too, laughing, shouting. I took a deep breath and, well, kneeling on one knee was a bit tough given our height difference, so I squatted instead, clutched his hand, and looked up at him. Daniel, marry me, I said loudly. The world froze for a beat. Then came the whistles, cheers, and laughter. Say yes, someone yelled. Daniel stared at me, completely caught off guard. His pale cheeks flushed crimson, so red it spread all the way to his ears. He looked down at me, his beautiful eyes filled with surprise and something else I couldn't quite read. Blake, his voice was hoarse. I'm serious, I said quickly. I know I'm a beta and you're an alpha, but I don't care. I've wanted to marry you since we were kids. I'll earn money and support us. You just keep being beautiful, that's all I ask. The laughter around us got louder. Daniel stared at me for so long that my legs went numb. Finally, he bent down, pulled me up, and held me tightly in his arms. His heartbeat was fast, loud, thumping against my chest through the thin fabric of our gowns. Okay, he whispered in my ear, voice trembling just a little. I jumped up in pure joy, wrapped my arms around his neck. It's a deal. No take-backs. 12. And just like that, our marriage was decided. My parents didn't even blink. They'd already been treating Daniel as family for years. But Daniel insisted on paying for the house himself. With the money he'd saved from part-time jobs in college and 2 years of working, he managed the down payment on a small apartment. This is our home, he said, holding the property deed, his eyes shining. Did I like it? I loved it, more than I could ever say. During the wedding preparations, I was on cloud 9 the entire time. Picking suits, booking the hotel, sending invitations. I did it all myself, grinning like an idiot. To anyone who'd listen, I'd brag, I'm getting married. Yes, married. Yes, he's gorgeous. Yes, he's an alpha. And what of it? I love it. On the wedding day, I wore my best suit and stood at the end of the red carpet, watching Daniel walk toward me in a white tuxedo, so strikingly beautiful he didn't even look real. That was the moment I thought, look at him, that's the person I've loved my whole life. My Daniel. My husband-to-be. Perfect. By the time we reached the toasting part of the banquet, I was completely drunk on happiness, and also, well, on alcohol. I didn't turn down a single glass. Daniel, with his cool demeanor and SSS-level alpha aura, didn't have the same problem. Hardly anyone dared to push him to drink. He only sipped a few glasses politely. By the end, I could barely stand. He had to hold me up. 13. A few distant relatives came over, laughing and teasing, Blake, you're a lucky man. Such a beautiful spouse. You'll have kids in no time, huh? My brain was a fog, but the urge to show off still burned bright. I raised my glass, slurring, oh of course. The more, the merrier. My husband, Hick, is so good, we'll definitely have lots of love. I felt Daniel's arm around me tighten slightly, but I was too drunk to notice, just kept laughing like an idiot. When we finally made it back to the wedding suite, I collapsed onto the soft bed, my last thought being, wedding night, I can do this, totally can. Then I felt someone undoing my tie, gently taking off my jacket. Must be Daniel, right? So considerate, so perfect. Half asleep, I tried to roll over, to take initiative as the husband, but my limbs were useless. Blake, Daniel's voice came low, soft, almost teasing by my ear. If you don't have the strength, how about I take the lead tonight? Take the lead. My thoughts were a blur. I could barely think. Something important slipped through the cracks of my mind. Okay, I mumbled, thinking he was just being sweet. Then I felt his lips, cool at first, then hot. And then, wait, no, something was wrong. The touch, the pressure, the way things were spiraling out of control. I forced my eyes open, and there they were, those dark, intense eyes staring down at me. Eyes filled with something wild, dangerous, and unmistakably alpha. 14. At that moment, Daniel was no longer the calm, gentle man I knew. The quiet obedience was gone. In its place burned something darker, an intensity one couldn't read, a flickering fire in his eyes that made my pulse stumble. He braced one hand against the wall by my head, muscles shifting under smooth skin, his strength undeniable. Wait, Daniel, you. Panic kicked in. I tried to push him away, but compared to his strength, my efforts were like trying to move a mountain with bare hands. Baby, he murmured, lowering his head until our noses brushed. His voice was deep, rough, and trembling with something dangerous. You promised me. I thought you meant, MMPH. Any further words were swallowed by his kiss, by that unstoppable tide that left no space for protest. So much for the gentle, considerate spouse. So much for fragile and tender. That power, that dominance. Liar, absolute liar. When I woke up the next morning, every muscle in my body felt like it had been dismantled and reassembled. I ached everywhere. Daniel was still asleep beside me, sunlight spilling over his peaceful face. His lashes cast small shadows on his cheeks, soft and innocent as ever. Yeah, right. I wasn't falling for that act again. I glared at him, furious enough to bite, but afraid of waking the beast and inviting round two. So I dragged myself out of bed, holding the wall for balance, and staggered into the living room. I grabbed my phone, ready to call my mom, half to complain, half to ask how to file for divorce. Just as I found her number, I heard soft footsteps. Daniel appeared, wearing a loose robe that revealed his collarbone and the faint outline of his chest. His hair was tousled, his eyes hazy from sleep, and there was a flicker of worry there. Baby, he said quietly, sounding like a kid afraid of being scolded. Are you mad at me? That tone, that face. My heart softened immediately. No, I muttered, turning away awkwardly. I'm sorry. He lowered his head, voice muffled. I lost control last night. Are you okay? Should I give you a massage? No. I blurted out instantly. A massage? As if that wouldn't turn into something else. Oh. His lashes drooped, and he looked even more dejected. Then I'll make breakfast. I even learned to bake cookies. Do you want to try them? Sure. He brightened instantly and hurried into the kitchen, his robe swaying behind him. I stared at his retreating figure, my anger melting into something helpless and confused. Forget it. Last night had been unexpected, yes, but not unbearable. And he did bake cookies. That had to count for something, right? Divorce? What divorce? I could make this work. 15. So, I shamelessly enjoyed my Daniel-style breakfast and temporarily buried the idea of divorce. What I didn't realize was that my momentary weakness had doomed me to a very exhausting married life. Because that alpha, my dear, overly literal husband, seemed to have engraved my drunken words about many children and much happiness into his DNA. Baby, he'd say, "You said we should work hard for that, right? Baby, we need to try a little more. Baby, do you prefer boys or girls?" I preferred my waist intact, thank you very much. I started to suspect Daniel had taken some kind of mysterious advanced training, or maybe he was just naturally unstoppable. By day, he was the picture of purity and gentleness. By night, an untamed wolf who knew no limits. I wanted to protest, to reclaim my rightful authority as the head of the household, but then I'd see that too beautiful face, the way he cared for me so thoughtfully during the day, or those fleeting glances of insecurity, like he was afraid I'd leave him, and my heart would melt all over again. Fine, maybe he was just enthusiastic at night, and honestly, being held by him did feel safe. Yes, safe, that's all it was. So I lived my double life, being doted on by my sweet spouse by day and mercilessly handled by him at night, painful but strangely happy. One day, a friend from abroad returned and invited a few of us to a reunion. I went, of course, and proudly brought Daniel along. I was ready to show off my beautiful husband. As expected, my friends were instantly blown away. "Blake, you lucky bastard, he's gorgeous," they said, clinking glasses. After a few drinks, my bragging instincts came roaring back. I threw my arm around Daniel and laughed, "Of course. My husband's perfect. Can cook, can clean," and at night he, under the table, Daniel's hand gently squeezed mine. Instant sobriety. I choked back the rest of that sentence and forced a laugh. "And he's so considerate, haha." My friends cracked up. "Wow, Blake, never thought you'd be the one to land such a top-tier alpha. I bet he keeps you in line, huh?" Another added, "Look at those dark circles. Someone didn't get much sleep, am I right?" They all burst into laughter. My face burned. My dignity, gone. "Nonsense," I snapped. "Who's getting kept in line? I'm the one in charge at home, right, Daniel?" I jabbed his side with my elbow, signaling him to cooperate. Daniel turned to me, eyes so tender they could melt glass, and nodded obediently. Blake's the boss at home. See?" I said proudly, lifting my chin. My friends howled. Sure, definitely not whipped at all. Not whipped, it's called husband authority," I corrected, crossing my arms. "I'm the husband." Yeah, whatever you say, husband," they teased, laughing harder. They didn't believe a word. 16. After the gathering, we got home. I barely had time to close the door before Daniel slipped behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. His chin rested on my shoulder, breath warm against my ear. His voice was low, a touch dangerous. "Baby, you were quite confident out there today." My heart skipped. That tone, that posture, the wolf was back. "Why yeah, I guess," I said quickly, trying to wriggle free. I should go shower." But Daniel only held me tighter, a quiet chuckle vibrating against my back. "No rush." He turned me around and pressed me against the door, fingers brushing under my chin, his eyes dark and unreadable. "Didn't you say you're the one in charge at home?" "Why yeah," I stammered, trying to sound firm. Then, Daniel leaned in, his nose brushing mine, his tone teasing. "Tonight, do you want to be on top, or should I?" What kind of trap question was that? If I said me, I'd regret it tomorrow. If I said you, my pride was doomed. He watched me squirm, amusement glinting in his eyes. Then, softly, "If you can't decide, how about I choose for you?" My brain short-circuited. I'll do it. I'll be on top. To hell with it. I could always call in sick tomorrow. My pride mattered more. Daniel blinked, surprised, but quickly smiled and nodded. "Okay, whatever you say, baby." He actually let go of me, lay down on the bed, and closed his eyes, looking perfectly docile and ready. That wasn't right. Why was it this easy? Still, I wasn't going to question my luck. Opportunity like this doesn't come twice. 17. I took a deep breath, gathered what was left of my courage, and clumsily climbed on top of him. My hands trembled as I fumbled with the buttons of his sleep shirt. After what felt like forever, I managed to undo two, revealing the sculpted lines of his collarbone and a glimpse of his chest. I swallowed hard. My mouth was suddenly dry. The muscles looked very touchable. I tested the theory, brushing my hand across his skin. He flinched slightly, but didn't open his eyes. Only his breathing quickened. That gave me confidence. I leaned down, imitating what he usually did, and left a small kiss on his collarbone. Not bad, I thought proudly. Just as I started to explore further, the world flipped. In a heartbeat, Daniel had turned the tables. I blinked up at him, dazed, now pinned under his weight. The obedient angel act was gone. Those eyes were full of mischief and power. "Baby," he whispered, brushing his lips against my nose. His voice was husky and amused. "Being on top must be exhausting. Let me handle the hard work, okay? You cheated. I spluttered, struggling uselessly. He shook his head, looking perfectly serious. Not cheating, just taking care of my husband. Then, lowering his voice even further, he breathed against my ear. Besides, you touched me earlier. Now it's my turn. Daniel, you liar, total liar. Protest denied. The next morning, I was once again clutching my aching back, glaring at the heart-shaped cookies he'd baked for breakfast. Husband authority? Yeah, non-existent. And so, our days went on, painful, exhausting, but undeniably joyful. Daniel perfectly embodied the phrase, graceful in public, capable in the kitchen, and wild behind closed doors. By day, he was the ideal, attentive husband. Every morning, he woke up on time to prepare breakfast, mixing traditional and modern recipes in creative ways, leaving me completely satisfied. Even the lunch I packed for work was a masterpiece, so impressive that my colleagues openly envied me, asking if I had secretly hired a Michelin star chef as my husband. When I returned home, the apartment was always spotless. The laundry on the balcony smelled like sunlight and fabric softener. I'd collapse onto the couch, and Daniel would hand me slippers and a cup of warm water before slipping on his apron to prepare dinner. Whenever I tried to help in the kitchen, he'd gently push me back. Baby, you've worked hard today. Let me handle the little things. Look at him, so considerate, so attentive. Though sometimes I felt a slight twinge when he said, "You've worked hard today, baby." Something about the tone was loaded. Regardless, daytime Daniel perfectly matched every fantasy I'd ever had of a sweet, capable husband. If only nights could be so peaceful. But as soon as night fell, my sweet, attentive husband switched modes. Baby, are you tired? Let me give you a massage. At first, I naively enjoyed it, until I realized the massage inevitably drifted to unusual areas. Baby, I warmed up your pajamas for you. And then I'd find myself trapped in his arms, pajamas and all, unable to move. Tomorrow's the weekend, you can sleep in a little. A sentence that usually meant, tonight, overtime in the bedroom. 19. I tried to resist. Really? I even bought books like How a Beta Should Manage Your Alpha Spouse and hid them under the bed for secret study sessions. It didn't last. Not 2 days later, Daniel discovered them while tidying up. He held the book, half smiling, half amused. Baby, are you unhappy with me? Need to read this? I snatched the book and shoved it into the trash. No, I only bought it casually. You're the best, Daniel. Satisfied, he kissed my forehead. Good boy. Great. Attempt at husband authority. Failed. My status plummeted even further. I even tried complaining to my parents. After hearing my pitiful tirade, my mom was silent for 3 seconds, then slapped her thigh. Oh, Daniel's getting better and better. He works all day and still takes care of you so well, Blake. You should be grateful. My dad pushed up his glasses and added, exactly. Daniel is an SSS level alpha. He lets you be on top, so be happy, and don't complain. Seriously? My own parents? Worse, one day we ran into a few thugs from Daniel's high school, guys who had bullied him back then. They weren't looking so successful now, and when they saw Daniel beside me, calm, elegant, clearly thriving, they looked uneasy. I tried to steer Daniel around them, but one muttered, "TCH, the pretty boy's doing well." Instead of finding an omega, he shamelessly clings to some rich ordinary beta. Daniel froze. I hadn't even realized it when the pressure around him suddenly dropped. He turned his head, eyes icy, scanning the thug. That look, completely different from the gentle, obedient Daniel I knew. It radiated dominance, an oppressive alpha aura in full force. The thug's face went pale. He froze, and even his companions instinctively stepped back. Apologize. Daniel's voice was calm, but it brooked no refusal. The thug's lips trembled. He muttered a meek, sorry, and fled with his friends. I was stunned. On the way home, I couldn't help sneaking glances at Daniel. He seemed to have returned to his gentle, harmless self, inspecting our groceries and softly asking what kind of soup I wanted tonight, corn and ribs or winter melon with clams. What just happened? I asked cautiously. Daniel, just now. He looked up, innocent and clear-eyed. What do you mean, baby? Nothing. I swallowed my words. It had to be a fluke. My Daniel was gentle. Surely it was just an accidental burst of alpha energy. 20. That evening, I lingered in the shower longer than usual, lost in thought about the day. Daniel knocked on the door. Baby, are you done? Need my help? No, I'm almost done. I dried off, wrapped in a robe, and came out. Daniel leaned against the door, hairdryer in hand, his gaze deep and unreadable. You took quite a while in the shower today. Just thinking about stuff. He stepped closer and pressed me into the chair, brushing my hair with gentle fingers as the warm air buzzed around us. Baby, his voice mixed with the hum of the dryer, soft and fuzzy. Don't worry about what anyone says. You're always my husband. Sweet, if he hadn't gently bitten my earlobe just after saying it. When my hair was dry, he dropped the dryer, wrapped his arms around me from behind, and rested his chin on my shoulder. Baby, he murmured, low and rough, I'm a little upset today. Why? I asked instinctively, turning to comfort him. Because someone made my husband unhappy. My chest warmed. I turned to reassure him, only to meet those dark, possessive eyes. Daniel leaned down and kissed me, murmuring hoarsely, Baby, you need to comfort me properly. Wait, what? That logic didn't make sense. Why was I supposed to comfort him just because someone upset him? And in this way, resistance was useless. 21. The next morning, I was once again rubbing my sore back, glaring at Daniel as he cheerfully hummed and prepared breakfast. I bit into my fried egg in frustration. Liar, absolute liar, all that perfect husband nonsense, fake. This guy was a wolf in sheep's clothing. After breakfast, Daniel came over to wipe the jam off my lips, stealing a quick kiss in the process. Baby, after work today, I'll pick you up. Want to see that new movie? Looking into his bright, expectant eyes, I melted again. Alright, fine. Even if he was ferocious at night, he was still sweet during the day. And let's be honest, he looked incredible. So handsome to show off in public. Husband authority? Forget it. I sighed and kissed him back. Good. Daniel's smile curved, triumphant, like a cat who'd just stolen cream. My husband is the best. Yeah, this life was done. Completely, undeniably, and happily done.